Everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to cover a topic that has a ton of mixed opinions about it. I've had my mind go back and forth on this subject for a long time, but today I'm going to lay it out exactly how I currently see it. We're going to break this video down into 3 parts. First, do more hours make you a better pilot? Second, when do the number of hours not matter? And third, do the current hour requirements make sense? Let's get into it. When you are just starting out, hours are everything, literally everything. It's hard to overstate how critical every single flight hour matters. Every hour is monumental. It's hugely pivotal. I love telling this story when I was in flight school back in Hawaii at Mauna Loa Helicopters. After every single flight with my instructor, I would do a 0.8, a 0.9, a 1.0. When we would come down, I was so exhausted. I would go straight home and I would take a nap. I was mentally and physically just drained after every single flight. But as you fly more and more, it definitely does become easier. It becomes less exhausting and you can just do it easier. When I first started, I thought people who had like 250 hours, I thought they were basically experts. I thought they were like so good, like they had 250 hours. And then as I continued on, I was like pilots that have 500 or 1,000 hours. They were basically untouchable, and people that had like 2,000 hours, they were on a different planet than me. They were just like in a different world. But as I kind of grew and progressed in my career, the numbers that people and the hours that people had started to kind of tell a different story. I met some pilots early on who had like 750 hours, and they were so incredibly sharp. Their skills were unmatched. They were professional. They had the knowledge, and I was like, that is a good helicopter pilot. And then I met some pilots with 750 hours who we can just say were not of the same caliber. They were kind of scary, and that was like a huge eye-opener for me. That's when I started to realize that flight hours don't necessarily correlate directly to skill or competency. The real differentiator in pilot skill is the type of work you're doing. If you take someone who graduates flight school at like 200 hours and immediately flies R-44 tours versus someone who graduates with the same 200 hours and goes and becomes a flight instructor, and you both fast forward to when they both have like 750 hours, the difference is night and day. The tour pilot has done pickups, set downs, takeoffs, and approaches, and a ton of straight and level flight. Meanwhile, the flight instructor has done all of that, plus all of the maneuvers, tons of auto rotations, straight in auto rotations, 180-degree auto rotations, settling with power, vortex ring state, steep approaches, quick stops, hover autos, max performance takeoffs. They've done off airports, cross countries, night flights, night cross countries, all of this, slopes, all while teaching their students and fixing the helicopter when the helicopter gets in like a compromised position. It is hard for me to convey how big the gap is and the difference between the tour pilot and the instructor. So the number of hours really matter. I would argue that a flight instructor with 1,000 or 1,500 hours is significantly more skilled than a tour pilot with 5 or 10,000 hours. Is that harsh? Maybe, but I also believe it is true. Do more hours make you a better pilot? Yes, but the type of hours matter more, which brings us to something even more interesting. I would say every hour to up till about 1,500 hours is hugely significant. There is an enormous difference between a 250-hour pilot and a 750-hour pilot. And there is a huge gap between a 750-hour pilot and a 1,500-hour pilot. If I had to draw it out, I'll throw up a chart right now. The curve looks pretty much exponential early on, massive leaps in skill from flight to flight. But once you hit about 1,500 hours, in my opinion, it starts to flatten out. This is the chart in my eyes, it's pretty dramatic. That is really why I titled this video, Why 1500 Hours Matters. It's where pilots just don't really feel like students anymore. They don't feel like just basic employees. This is where you start to feel like a professional, like a skilled professional. Your skills are super sharp. The decisions come to you faster. You're more calm. You're more clear-headed. You know what the helicopter is going to do. You go from, I hope this works, to, I know exactly what this helicopter is going to do. There is confidence. There's a ton of competence, and I think that naturally blooms in a pilot around 1500 hours. Take a pilot with like 4,000 hours, which is insanely high but by most standards, and compare that to a pilot with 6,000 hours. 4,000 to 6,000. Is there going to be a difference? Maybe, but it's probably not going to be very meaningful. They are probably extremely similar in skill, probably extremely similar in knowledge and competency. I think the FAA pretty much nailed it. When they made that airline transport pilot requirement 1,500 hours, I think that's pretty much spot on. As you hit higher and higher hour requirements, the difference in competency starts to become like insanely small. In my own personal experience, when I hit like the 1,500 hour mark, that is where I felt like, okay, I'm a professional. I'm not an expert, but I know what I'm doing. I felt quite competent. I just felt like I knew what I was doing. Every hour after that, you still learn and grow more, but the knowledge that you were learning in each flight becomes less. I've seen pilots who have 5,000 hours who are razor sharp, excellent, super good, constantly learning, and then I've seen 10,000 hour pilots who are mentally checked out. They think they're so good, and they make super basic mistakes that like a 500 hour pilot wouldn't make. Flight hours matter until they don't. And that brings us to kind of our final question. Let's look at the current hour requirements. The FAA says you need about 40 hours for your private pilot certificate. Honestly, I think that's a little bit low. I personally think most pilots need like 50 when they're initially starting out. 50 hours, I think you're like pretty good. I don't think 40 hours is super far off, but I think most pilots need a little bit more. For your commercial, you need 150 hours, which I actually think is like pretty much spot on. I think that's pretty much perfect. I think anything beyond 150 hours, most pilots that I've seen don't really gain that much. They're like pretty skilled at 150 hours, but beyond that, you're kind of just like burning hours, burning time, just waiting for job opportunities. Now let's look at jobs, because that's where it really matters. Tours, flying tours at like 200 to 250 hours. Is it safe? Yeah, it's probably safe, but as we talked about earlier, as a pilot, you're pretty much crushing your growth and your skill growth. You're just going to start doing laps now. Pickups, set downs, takeoffs, and then flying laps. Your skills are pretty much not going to grow at all anymore. Flight instructing, I think everyone should go become a flight instructor. I recommend this in like pretty much every video. Teaching others forces you to become so competent. Teaching all the ground material, but then doing all the maneuvers. Like we talked about, auto rotations, settling with powers, slopes, all of those. You just become so much better. And you get to do night flights and night cross-country flights. So beneficial to become a flight instructor. But flying tours at like 250 hours in an R44, it's probably fine. You should have more hours. I think that's like a 400 to 500 hour job, but it's fine. I think flying news helicopters at 500 hours, those are kind of where you can start to get some news jobs. I think that's fine. But let's talk about like the bigger jobs. Tours, flying tours in New York City, Grand Canyon, Hawaii. 1,000 hours, I believe, should be the minimum. Companies like Maverick, Papillon, some of the companies down in New York City, they require 1,000 hours, and I think that should be the minimum. That's kind of where you start to really become a professional and you really have a lot of competency. Flying a turbine helicopter in a dynamic environment with less than 1,500 hours, it kind of makes me nervous. You can do it, but I think 1,000 hours should be the minimum for that job. But now let's talk about the big one. EMS, helicopter air ambulance. This is what I do now. The industry standard for this job is 2,000 hours. I think that is too high. The difference between a 1,500 hour pilot and a 2,000 hour pilot is just not big enough to justify the time gap. In my experience, 1,500-hour pilots are typically pretty good, pretty competent. At that point, you have quite a lot of experience, a lot of time in the seat. You've done a lot of cross countries, you've done a lot of night flying, you've done a lot of off airports, you've had a lot of situations come up and you've had to make a lot of decisions. Your weather judgment is probably pretty good. All the stuff that you need to safely operate an air ambulance, I think you have at it by 1,500 hours. Yes, 2,000 hours, if you have that, you're technically going to be a more skilled pilot, but I don't think the difference between 1,500 and 2,000 is large enough to justify hurting the industry. It just burns pilots out going from 1,500 to 2,000 I don't think you're building enough skills in that time. I think at 1,500 hours, you can do the job fine. 1,500 hours, in my opinion, is more than enough. So to summarize this video, flight time matters and the number of hours matter, but what matters more is the quality and the type of flight hours that you're getting. Flight hours are definitely important, no question, but there is not a magic number. It's about what's inside those hours, what you have done, what challenges you've faced, what emergencies you've had, where you have flown, all the lessons you've learned, what you picked up, what made you sharp. All of that is what matters more. The pilots who really stand out aren't the ones who have just 10,000 hours. Like, I've seen some 10,000 hour pilots and I would not trust my life with them. I've seen 1,000-hour pilot who I was like, you're really good. So whether you have like 50 hours or 5,000 hours, the real question is, are you growing? Are you learning? Are you getting better? Are you getting more experiences? So that's what really determines what a good pilot is. The hours don't matter as much. It's the skill and the experience within those hours. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do the number of flight hours matter? Do you agree with my assessment that 1,500 is kind of the benchmark of where things really start to come together and you become a professional pilot? Let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.